Most people moving and working in the vertical world need it, a rope. But interestingly, it is pretty useless without one thing, some kind of end termination. Whether knotted, spliced or manufactured, in this little series we will have a look at various rope end terminations and specifically we'll take a closer look at the splice. Hi, my name is Phil from the Edelrid Knowledge Base. Ever since the rope got invented over more than 40,000 years ago, it always served at least one of two possible purposes: force transmission or energy absorption. But without a way to fix the rope to the object you want to transmit a force to or whose energy you want to absorb with the rope, a rope is pretty useless. So end terminations are as old as the rope itself. While of course different knots were most likely the first of its kind, today we know various different ways of achieving the same thing. Let's take a look at what there is and what the possibility and limits there are. So what do we have? Well, the oldest, most common and most versatile termination for sure is simply the knot. The advantages are obvious. Apart from seemingly endless possibilities of knot types you can choose from, a knot can be made into any textile rope whenever and wherever you need it. And it can be untied, of course. It is fast, it is simple, and it is versatile. And it also can be easily checked if it was made properly. The downside of this termination might only be maybe the fact that it can come undone. So attention is needed to tie it properly. Leave enough excess rope coming out and or potentially back it up. Another option is the sewn termination. Also here there are various possibilities of sewing a termination, but maybe the most common one is this construction here. A simple rope sling held together by a bar tag between the parallel rope strands, forming the eye. The advantage here is the very compact volume of the termination compared to the knot. For the downside, on the other hand, could be argued that it is permanent and not everybody can and should do it. To complete the standard types of rope termination for textile ropes, we got the splice. In general, all braids can be spliced. However, some braid constructions are easier and certainly more meant to be spliced than others. But whatever it is at the end, you can easily say that this guy here for sure wins the prize for the most compact rope termination compared to the other two. And again, there are many different splice types just as there are knot types to choose from. But in general, it takes from 5 minutes up to 30 minutes to splice a rope, depending on the splice type as well as the rope, and you need quite some knowledge and experience to do it properly. The downside of a splice, apart from the time it takes to make it, could be argued that this cannot be easily checked if it was done properly. Most of what forms a splice lies in the inner part of the rope and is not visible to the user. So extra caution is advised here. Apart from those typical textile termination we just saw, there are also typical ones for wired rope construction. And the splice might be the connecting element here as it is generally seen in both worlds. Other metal rope termination methods can also be applied to textile braids, like what I did here, for example, with a pressed rope end termination. However, it does not work the other way around usually. A wired rope cannot be knotted or sewn, of course. Well, now that we have seen the most common options and talked about their advantages and disadvantages, let's take a look at some more factual characteristics and break them. I have put one of each rope termination on the same rope with a maximum tensile strength of 29 kN. This value is tested on a free stretch of that rope, so it is really the basic strength of the rope. We brake test all terminations now and have a look at how much force they can get out of this rope, meaning how efficient they really are. Remember here, these values are for a very specific termination on a very specific rope. This can give us a tendency of how efficient these different terminations are, but by no means does this mean that they will end up with the same relative results on other rope constructions. So we can see that a knot has the lowest strength efficiency here with only 56%. The sewn termination as well as the splice get the most strength out of the rope with 93%. However, it certainly seems to depend on the construction. As you see, two different sewn and spliced construction ended up at 57%, respectively 63%. The press termination wasn't too bad with 72%, although again, this is not a common textile rope termination.
Now, another very common end termination for wired ropes are those metal sockets. They work in a way that they have a conically shaped hole on the inside where the end of the wire rope is inserted, the ends are frayed out, and then you insert some kind of resin or very often liquid metal so that you form a perfect form fit in which all of the strands are equally loaded in a parallel way. And this is probably the most efficient end termination, leading to results of 100% efficiency. For this video, I recreated this end termination with a textile rope as well. Unfortunately, I didn't have the perfect resin for this, so I used injection mortar that we just had here. And so we didn't get the overwhelming results, but in theory, a very, very efficient end termination.
So to sum it up, there is no perfect rope termination. All terminations have their justification, as each one simply can have the best properties for the different application scenarios. You want versatility, so go with a knot. You want high strength and low price, go with a sewn termination. You want as compact and as beautiful as possible, go with a splice. In the next episodes, we will dive a little deeper into the splicing world and explore different aspects of this termination. So stay tuned.